From falling into a crocodile enclosure to cute animals turning on you, nature can be scary. Here are some of the most recent wild animal attacks. Eaten alive. A farmer in Cambodia fell into an enclosure that had about 40 crocodiles in it. What happened next is a tragic and very disturbing tale. The farmer was eaten alive. The victim's name is Luan Nam, who was 72 years old in 2023 at the time of his horrific death. According to local police, Luan was using a stick to push aside a crocodile who had just laid eggs. He was leaning into the enclosure with the stick between his fingers when the reptile sensed an opportunity. The crocodile grabbed the stick between its jaws and pulled, flipping Luan into the cage. Dozens of crocodiles swarmed the elderly man like a pack of savage hyenas. Before anyone could react, Luan Nam had been torn to shreds. It was almost as if he had fallen into a blender. There was nothing that could be done to save his life without others risking death. The first crocodile attacked, then the rest swarmed as they smelled the blood. Several of his body parts were consumed by the crocodiles. Photos from the scene are honestly too shocking to look at. They display the crocodile enclosure splattered with blood as if it were a slaughterhouse. There's even a picture of a crocodile chewing on a shoe. It was utterly terrifying. But why in the world did this happen? Luan Nam was a crocodile farmer, a surprisingly common job in and around the area of Siem Reap, the town where Angkor Wat stands. Crocodiles are bred for a variety of reasons, from selling their meat to selling their eggs and their skin. They're also harvested for making leather and other products. According to Luan's family, they had urged him to stop raising the animals because it was too dangerous in his advanced age. But that didn't stop him from trying to grab those fresh crocodile eggs and be eaten alive. Hot tubbing gone wrong. I'm going to paint a scenario for you, so stay with me for a minute. You're with your significant other in a hot tub. It's a Saturday night, and the two of you have rented a luxurious home in a wooded area of Colorado in Chaffee County. The hot tub is bubbling, you're as relaxed as can be. Things are looking good. Then, from out of nowhere, a mountain lion attacks you from behind. Your significant other screams as the mountain lion claws at your head. This is what happened in March 2023 to a couple who thought they were taking a nice vacation. The victim and his wife were sitting in the hot tub of their rental property when at 8 p.m., a mountain lion grabbed him by the head with its paws. He was left with superficial scratches to the top of his head, but he nearly lost his ear. Things would have been significantly worse if not for the quick thinking of his wife. His wife screeched and splashed hot water at the mountain lion, which frightened it enough to give up the attack. As you can undoubtedly imagine, the pair were quite shaken. They phoned Colorado Parks and Wildlife to let them know what happened. The guy who was scratched by the lion wasn't seriously injured, so he was able to clean his own wounds at home. Officials arrived to search for the wild animal, but weren't able to find it. And now for number 7, but first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Jamar Glenn and 82nd Airborne Vet for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about crazy animal attacks. The Rabid Beaver. Cartoons have given us all a false sense of beavers. Cartoon beavers are so cute and cuddly you would hardly expect them to be vicious. But in Georgia, a young girl was just savaged by a rabid beaver that nearly killed her. On a warm Saturday during the summer of 2023, a young girl was swimming down at Lake Lanier with her father near Gainesville. They were on private property, relaxing and taking in the serenity of nature. Then, the serenity of nature attacked. A beaver estimated to weigh about 55 pounds emerged from the water and sunk its huge beaver teeth into the young girl. She screamed, as any of us certainly would. Her father heard the shout for help and launched into action. In a horrible turn of events, the girl's dad was forced to beat the beaver to death to stop it from attacking his kid. The nightmare didn't end there. The beaver was picked up and taken for testing. The test came back positive for rabies, and the little girl had to be treated for rabies before she came down with symptoms. Even something as small as a beaver bite can transfer rabies into the human body. If left untreated, rabies destroys the central nervous system and attacks the brain until the patient is dead. State wildlife biologists say beaver attacks are extremely rare. The last one in the Lake Lanier region was 13 years ago. it wouldn't have happened if not for the rabies. Don McGowan is the supervisor for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Resources Division. He said that animals that get rabies go absolutely crazy. In this case, the rabies just happened to be in the biggest beaver the warden had ever seen. Chaos in Australia. A man in Australia narrowly escaped death this summer when he was mauled by a positively enormous saltwater crocodile. The attack sent about 80 people fleeing the watering hole amidst cries of panic. The incident unfolded in Australia's Northern Territory at a popular swimming spot called Top End. This is about an hour south of Darwin. One of the people there that day was Police Constable Tanika Starr of Tasmania. She was swimming with her family and kids when suddenly a commotion erupted. Tanika didn't see what happened, but she certainly heard the cries for everyone to get out of the water. Tanika and her family formed a circle and quickly made their way from the swimming hole. Forming a circle is a smart tactic to make sure that nobody is left behind during a crocodile attack. Tanika described the whole experience as pretty terrifying. The only person who was physically hurt by the crocodile was an unidentified man in his 60s. Everybody ran from the water screaming and hollering while the poor guy was savaged by a prehistoric lizard. He had to be rescued by somebody in a small boat because no one else would get into the water again. The crocodile that bit him was about 6 feet long, maybe longer. The victim suffered only a couple of flesh wounds to his arms. It was honestly lucky he didn't lose his arms. Tiger shark versus kayak. Scott Haraguchi was fishing from his kayak off the coast of Oahu this spring when he encountered a shark. Kayaks are generally safe, but still not the ideal vessel for maneuvering a shark encounter. A great white shark could, assuming it wanted to, very easily bite through the fiberglass to take a chunk out of your legs. Scott wasn't facing a great white, but a tiger shark, which I'd say is equally frightening, if not more so. Scott was peacefully fishing when the tiger shark rammed into his kayak. The whole thing was caught on video thanks to his GoPro camera. He was recording his fishing trip and hadn't been expecting to record a brush with death. According to Scott, his first instinct was that he had been hit by a turtle, but this turtle was big, smooth, and sank its teeth into Scott's kayak. Then that was it. The shark bit the kayak, realized it wasn't tasty, and swam off to do whatever sharks do when they aren't eating people. Scott had some serious composure though. He continued fishing even after the attack, where I'm sure plenty of folks would have given up and paddled for shore. What would you do if a shark bit your kayak? Let me know in the comments below. The bear in the Alps. In the Italian Alps, a jogger had a fatal encounter with a very large and very angry bear. Now Italian authorities are stuck deciding the fate of the brown bear. Do they euthanize the creature because it killed someone? Or do they release it back into the wild to potentially strike again? On April 5th, 2023, Andrea Papi went for his usual jog in a woodland path near the quaint village of Caldes. His family started to worry when he didn't return home. The family called the authorities, who launched a search party. Andrea's body was found at 3 a.m. the following morning. He had been mauled by a bear. 2 days later, the provincial president issued a kill order. However, the court suspended the order when an animal rights group known as LAV made an appeal. It's an extremely contentious issue because the bear is a wild animal and should be able to live in the forest and protect its cubs. Yet others argue that any bear that hurts a person should be given a death sentence. When the bear was captured, it turned out she was a female with 3 young cubs. The animals were caught and placed in custody. The death of Andrea was horribly tragic. It was also the first fatal bear attack in Italy, according to local newspaper Corriere della Sera. It's also true that brown bears almost went extinct in the Italian Alps in 1999. The European Union funded a project to bring bears from Slovenia into Italy to establish a viable population. There are now about 100 bears in Italy. Still not a great number, but better than nothing. So, what do you think should happen to the mama bear? Let me know in the comments below. Vampire fish blood spree. It was in the 1950s that vampire fish started to be controlled in the Great Lakes. Prior to this, vampire fish were responsible for killing more fish every year than humans were harvesting. They were unstoppable killers of the Great Lakes, and now they're back. The vampire fish is a real type of fish, even though it looks like a horrible monster. These things look like leeches on steroids, like the offspring of some horrible alien creature living in the deep sea. But they are fish, and they don't mess around when it comes to murder. They first invaded the Great Lakes at the start of the 20th century through human shipping canals. They slipped into the lakes from the Atlantic Ocean where they normally live in saltwater. Once the fish were in the lakes, it was very hard to get them out. These things are the vampires of the marine community. They spend about 20 months feeding on blood from other fish. They nearly wiped out the entire population of sport fish in the Great Lakes. In 2023, the population exploded for unknown reasons. It almost doubled in Lake Huron, with an estimated 200,000 of these vampiric fish ravaging the local population. They don't attack people, but they're still terrifying. They have a mouth like a natural drill. The fish's teeth latch onto the scales of another fish, then it bores a hole into them and slurps out their bodily fluids. The next time you go for a swim at Lake Huron, just remember these things are slithering all around your ankles. Trampled by an elk. In Arizona, a woman died from being trampled to death by an elk, perhaps by several elk. She is the first person in the state to have suffered such a horrible death. There have been a handful of attacks in the last few years, but none have ever turned deadly. On October 26, 2023, the victim was on her own property in the Hualapai Mountains. She was used to having elk around, so she wasn't scared of them. Officials believe she tried to feed a particularly violent elk and wound up being assaulted by one or more of the herbivores. When her husband arrived home that evening at about 6 p.m., he found his wife limp in the backyard. She was lying contorted near a bucket of spilled corn. There were no witnesses to say what happened, but the crime scene spoke volumes. The victim was not dead when her husband found her. She was taken to Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas and put into a medically induced coma. But sadly, she didn't make it. Arizona authorities are now warning everybody to stay away from elk, and please don't try to feed them. Man-eating tigers. Being killed by a cougar is extraordinarily rare, far more rare than being killed by a tiger. But if you are a rubber plantation worker in Malaysia, being eaten by a bloodthirsty cat is a very real occupational hazard. At least it was before Malaysian authorities captured 2 critically endangered Malayan tigers in November of 2023. That was just a little bit ago. The tigers were caught following an unprecedented rampage in which jungle villagers found themselves being eaten by extraordinarily clever cats. The reign of terror happened in Malaysia's Kelantan state. The most recent victim before the tigers were captured was a man working at a rubber plantation. He was mauled violently by a tiger and narrowly escaped with his life. The attack came just days after somebody from Myanmar was found dead in the same area. Then there was the Indonesian migrant worker whose body parts were found scattered in the jungle. The body parts were marked by tiger claws and teeth, making it pretty obvious what had happened. There were other attacks earlier this October. A 25-year-old man named Pisiamud went fishing and then was found dead. 2 days earlier, a 27-year-old man named Halim Asin was also found dead from an apparent tiger attack. Authorities in Malaysia couldn't believe the frequency of the killings. Between 2017 and 2022, there were only a total of 4 tiger attacks. Something caused the giant cats to ramp up their assaults. The unfortunate series of incidents were almost certainly because of the dire situation for wild Malayan tigers. Only 200 of these majestic animals are left in their natural habitat. They are at the very brink of extinction due to habitat loss and poaching. Without anywhere for them to live, it's expected that they will encounter humans, and in many cases, those encounters are deadly.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Portuguese Mana War in England. You might not expect to be attacked by anything at a beach in the UK. It's not Australia after all, but even on the beaches of England, there is something scary in the water. In the beaches of South Devon, there has been an increase in sightings of the Portuguese Mana War, a creature similar to a jellyfish with a deadly sting. Its tentacles are covered in tiny needles filled with venom that are meant to paralyze and kill fish instantly. You don't even need to get in the water to have a bad time with one of these. If one was sitting in the sand and you touched it, the extremely painful sting could be enough to put you in the hospital. and if your dog were to even so much as sniff at the Mana War, it could end up dead. According to Coast Guard volunteer David Bailey, the Portuguese Mana War never used to show up in England, but because of warmer winters and milder winds, they've been floating up from the warmer regions of the ocean and wind up in the English Channel, and from there they wash up on the beach. These creatures look like plastic bags floating in the water and are pretty much see-through, so they can be hard to avoid. Sometimes they can be in groups of up to 1,000. While a sting won't kill you, it will cause some damage. If you get stung, you will get enormous welts and can feel dizzy, nausea, or have trouble breathing. Getting stung is like being struck with a red-hot poker, and the pain can last for hours. Just remember, they can sting even when they're already dead, and they are now popping up in very unexpected places. The polar bears of the Arctic. In the Canadian North, extremely far north, all the way in the Arctic Circle, it's not unusual to come across polar bears. And if you happen to be there, you should beware of these bears because they can be extremely dangerous and can even rip your face off. Just recently in 2018, a hunting party from the small Inuit village of Naujat in Nunavut was out hunting narwhal and caribou, but they ran into some trouble with their boat, which left them stranded on the shore. And that was when a polar bear and her cub ambushed them. She probably saw them as a threat, especially since her cub was with her. The bear killed one hunter and injured 2 others in the vicious assault. But these people were hunters and armed to the teeth. Even that didn't save them from the initial surprise. Sadly, right after the attack, the Inuit shot the bears and killed them. The 2 surviving hunters, injured and unable to make it back to civilization, waited for 3 days with the slowly decaying body of their friend for rescuers to come. And all the while, more bears were congregating around their camp. The authorities showed up and killed the other polar bears when they saw the hunting party was surrounded. As brutal as that may sound, authorities in Canada say there are too many polar bears in the Canadian Arctic. Their numbers have actually gotten so out of control that they've become a threat to Inuit communities. There are nearly 25,000 polar bears roaming in the area, and they are all very hungry. What do you think? What would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments below. The black mamba of Mozambique. One of the deadliest snakes in the world is the black mamba, and it lives in Mozambique, which makes it a very scary place to visit if you're worried about snake bites. The reason the black mamba is so dangerous is that it's fast, it's extremely active, and it's hostile. This isn't the kind of snake that will slither away into the bushes when threatened. It will almost always attack when cornered, and it can strike multiple times and inject massive quantities of neurotoxic venom. When untreated, just one bite can kill a fully grown human in about 3 hours. Within just 30 minutes, most people experience difficulty breathing. After that, it's only a matter of time. The only good news is that black mambas don't kill that many people each year. According to the African Snakebite Institute, only about 1 person a year dies from the black mamba because there is an anti-venom. The real gamble is going on a vacation into snake territory. Would you take the chance? Are you afraid of snakes? Let me know down below. The boars of Barcelona. One of the most dangerous modern cities in the world to be attacked by a wild animal is Barcelona, Spain. Surprised? I was. The wild boars are so dangerous in Barcelona that nobody is safe, not even the famous pop star Shakira. The Colombian singer lives part-time in Barcelona and was out for a walk with her son in 2020. Suddenly, wild boars attacked her and also robbed her. Forget about petty thieves. Tourists also need to be on the lookout for thieving animals. According to what Shakira said, she and her 8-year-old son were walking through what was supposed to be a peaceful park in broad daylight. From out of nowhere, a pair of wild boars ran out of the trees. Then, one attacked her as a distraction while the other snatched her bag out of her hand and ran off into the forest. She got her bag back, but not before the boars ripped it to pieces. The boar didn't injure Shakira or her son during the incident, but they were lucky. The wild boar problem has been going on for many years. It seems to have peaked in 2016 when Spanish police received over 1,100 calls. These calls were about wild boars attacking dogs and cats, looting people's bags, and holding up traffic. According to the BBC, a city police officer tried to shoot a boar with his service revolver in 2013, but he missed the pig and hit his partner instead. Wild boars are a huge problem because they are strong and aggressive. They have a short temper and will not hesitate to charge at you. Besides that, they cause hundreds of car accidents and carry many diseases that can be passed on to humans, including tuberculosis, hepatitis E, and influenza A. Did you know that wild boars were so dangerous? Colombian hippos. Colombia is one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and not for reasons you might expect. Turns out hippo attacks are on the rise. By now, you've probably heard the story of Pablo Escobar's hippos. The drug lord had his own personal zoo at his luxurious compound in Hacienda Nápoles. Among his collection of exotic animals were some hippos. Rumor has it that Escobar hid a huge stash of treasure or what have you under a lake, filled it with water, and put hippos in there to keep people away. After his death in 1993, 4 hippos stayed at the estate and eventually became part of a theme park. But the hippos escaped, fled into the Colombian jungle, and they have multiplied like jackrabbits ever since. There are now about 90 of the hippos roaming around in the Colombian countryside, and an encounter with one can be deadly. Nobody knows this more than John Marquez. In 2021, he was out fishing with a group of friends near Puerto Triunfo. This is near the center of the hippopotamus territory, very near to Escobar's old compound. A hippopotamus exploded out of a bush and tried to kill John and his friends. The hippo hit John in the eye, nearly broke his left arm, and just about collapsed the left side of his chest as he tried to escape. Then the hippo ran away and was gone. The friends believe the hippo was actually just a small female calf, not even a fully grown adult, and yet it had the power to send John to the hospital with serious injuries. If you had to rate a hippo attack between a 1 and a 10 on the scary scale, what would you give them? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. The tigers of the Sundarbans. Did you know there are tigers tracking and eating humans? In the year 1666, the French explorer François Bernier went to the Sundarbans. This is a huge stretch of swampy marshland in eastern India and western Bangladesh. And he wrote that traveling in the marshes was extremely dangerous because as soon as you wanted to land your boat, at least one person would be killed by a tiger. He said these ferocious animals are so brave that they will enter the boat itself, and they will also carry away men as they sleep. And in the 1600s, people knew that in the Sundarbans, the tiger was king. To this day, tigers still have a very scary reputation in this part of the world. This isn't a place where you go for a leisurely hike, as a tiger will probably pounce on you from behind and eat you. They are known as man-eaters, but why does it seem to happen here and not other places? German biologist Hubert Hendricks believes it's because the cats drink saline water, which ends up dehydrating them, making them go mad. So they attack and eat people with no fear or remorse. The croc spot of Australia. You already know Australia is famous for its deadly creatures, but the Cahill's Crossing is one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world for one reason. It is a notorious crocodile hotspot. This crossing is shallow. It's only a few feet wide, and it's home to an infamous breeding ground of saltwater crocodiles. The crossing is on the East Alligator River in the Northern Territory, and it's been the site of plenty of accidents. There are reports of decapitations, people being eaten alive, and crocodiles swimming off with people's babies. But why does this seem to happen so often? It's because of the road. Sometimes it's dry, and sometimes the water rises quickly. Water almost always washes out the crossing, but this doesn't stop people from trying to drive their cars, RVs, and trucks across the thin strip of land. Sometimes they get to the other side, but it seems like often their vehicles get swept away into the river with the crocodiles, and people and their kids get eaten for lunch. Spanish spiders. A Spanish holiday might sound like a good time, but it could be the last vacation you ever take. Not only could you get robbed and attacked by a boar in Barcelona, but you could also lose a few of your fingers at a beach by being bitten by a venomous spider. Just recently, a 19-year-old tourist from Wales traveled to Ibiza to enjoy some fun and sun on the beach. And that's exactly what he was doing when a spider crept out of the sand and sunk its fangs into his flesh. What the heck? According to what the tourist told local news, He had been watching the sunset at the popular resort of San Antonio when something stung him on the hand. The man thought little of it and completely ignored what was happening. Pretty tough guy. He probably thought it was a bee or an ant sting. He didn't even get a good look at what bit him. He woke up at 5 o'clock the next morning with a swollen and burning hand. He was rushed to the hospital where tests revealed a brown recluse spider had bitten him. Bites are fairly common and can cause necrosis, but aren't usually this bad. The tourist's hand was already so rotten that he had to be sent back home to Wales to have 2 of his fingers amputated. Surprised? So am I. The terrifying snake pit. If you've ever been worried about falling into a giant pit of snakes like from Indiana Jones, the last place you want to go to is the town of Narcisse. It's a rural settlement in the Canadian province of Manitoba, which has the largest concentration of red-sided garter snakes on the planet. Of course, garter snakes aren't exactly as terrifying or threatening as anacondas, but it's still a pit full of snakes. It's not the type of snake you're dealing with that matters, but the fact there are tens of thousands of writhing serpents in great tangled heaps, and if you fall into one of these heaps, you're guaranteed to get bit. If a garter snake bites you on the eyeball, it's going to hurt like nobody's business. But let's look at why there are terrifying snake pits in this small rural settlement. It's because during the winter, the snakes migrate here to hibernate inside the subterranean caverns. Nature riddled the whole place with underground caves and passages. The snakes hide out here throughout the winter. Then, when the snow melts in April, thousands of the slimy serpents sneak out of their dens and perform mating rituals near the surface in huge rock pools. But don't worry, I'm being dramatic. The chances of being attacked as a bystander are extremely slim. Garter snakes won't attack a person, but if you fell into a pit with the snakes, you might just die of a heart attack. Giant rodents in Argentina. Anyone with a fear of rats should stay far away from the gated community in Argentina, where giant ones have recently moved in and caused havoc. The largest rodents in the world appeared from nowhere and took over an entire wealthy community. Residents have since reported trouble between their pets and the giant rodents, traffic accidents, and lawns covered in feces. Just how big are these rats? Some of them are over 4 feet long and weigh up to 174 pounds. For those of you who despise rats above all other creatures, living here would be a nightmare. But these aren't rats like you're used to seeing in the subways of a city or something. These are capybaras, giant rodents native to South America. We don't know capybaras for being aggressive to humans or other animals, as they are usually extremely peaceful. But if you get enough of them together and they develop a pack mentality, who knows what could happen? The residents of Nordelta, the affluent community under siege near Buenos Aires, have reported huge rodents destroying their gardens, walking in front of traffic and causing major accidents, and even attacking their pet dogs. And while the locals have called the capybaras invaders, that's not the truth at all. The neighborhood went up in the late 1990s on top of an important wetland along the banks of the second biggest river in South America. They tried to wipe the capybaras out, and now they are just trying to reclaim a bit of their homeland. Thanks for watching! Let me know which of these animal attack hotbeds scares you the most, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon for another amazing video. Bye!